A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, joining me in the studios now is Mandy Worby with all the breaking news from Israel and the Middle East. And Mandy, we have to start with the execution of the 6 Israeli hostages.
It was devastating over the weekend when I heard, first of all, I got the notice that Hirsch had been, that he was dead, that he was found. And then if we found out there were 6. So there was Hirsch, Goldberg, Poland, Ori, Danino, Eden, Yerushalmi, Carmel Gat, Alex Lobanov and Almog Sarusi. The IDF was actually closing in on the tunnel filled with Hamas terrorists. They were aware that the hostages were inside. They wanted to rescue them, of course, and the terrorists shot them all in the back of the head, point-blank range, before they could be rescued. Just prior to this, they had videoed each of these hostages. They have since release those videos as a means of psychological torture to their families in the nation of Israel. It is appalling, Andrew. Hamas has made a statement that it has informed all those who are holding the remaining hostages that if the IDF gets close to reaching them, they are to execute the hostages immediately. And I cannot repeat this strongly enough that the taking of the hostages, keeping the hostages, abusing the hostages, and murdering the hostages is all war crimes. I mean, we mentioned last week about the Bedouin Arab man. Remember him, Qaid Fahad al-Qadi, who was rescued by the IDF? And thank God he's alive. He informed the IDF that he'd been kept in a tunnel for a little while with the oldest Israeli hostage, who was over 80, very, very sick, asking for help, needing medical help, and Hamas just left him alone, didn't touch him, and then videoed him dying. He was just denied all medical, absolute human rights abuse for all of them.
Well, Mandy, that sounds like what was going on in the concentration camps in World War II, doesn't it? The same sort of treatment.
Absolutely. These guys are worse than Nazis. They've been described as, since October 7, worse than Nazis. I mean, the war crimes that Hamas has committed amounts to tens of thousands of them. Nobody is holding them to account. Nobody. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Andrew. They're quite bold and blatant about what they're doing, how they're doing it, publishing it to the world. The world simply excuses them and says, oh, it's resistance. It sickens me to my stomach, to be frank with you.
Yeah, well, once again, I mean, Hitler claimed that he was resisting the evil West too, didn't he? That the West had done all these horrible things to Germany, so he justified his atrocities with the same sort of language. And
these guys are modelled on Nazism. He's their hero.
Yeah, just awful, Mandy. But and I hear also that the people who were responsible for those murders were eventually killed themselves by the IDF.
The terrorists in that tunnel are gone.
So their final act is just to murder innocent civilians. Yeah, just horrible.
Disgusting.
So I want to also talk about the rest of the world. Has anyone condemned these executions of the 6 hostages?
Oh, yes, they have. Many leaders around the world have condemned the executions. You know, Canada, Australia, America, UK. They've all condemned the executions. But there's always a sting in the tail with their statements that Israel needs to do more, that the only solution is a 2-state solution. That's in spite of the fact that Hamas has already said they will not agree to a 2-state solution. They want a 1-state solution, and that doesn't include Israel at all. So they're trying to force Israel to do something that the enemy of Israel refuses to agree with. I just don't get the rationale, you know. I mean, did you know that President Biden told reporters on Monday that Bibi Netanyahu isn't doing enough to get Gaza hostage ceasefire deal? And then in response, a senior Israeli official said that it is puzzling that the president is pressing Netanyahu to agree to the US proposal because he did already as early as May 31. And also he agreed to the US bridging proposal on August 16. It's Hamas that keeps rejecting any deal. And this Israeli official went on to say that President Biden's remark is really dangerous, especially when it was made just days after Hamas executed 6 Israeli hostages, including an American citizen. Hirsch was an American citizen. So by doing that, what they're doing is they keep giving a justification and a green light to Hamas to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, well, I think it's dangerous that President Biden is actually running the free world right now. No disrespect to him, I don't think he remembers anything from May this year, Mandy, and he's just saying what he's told to say.
Well, the sad thing is that his cognitive abilities are in serious question, and everybody's acknowledged that fact. So considering he's the leader of the free world, it's concerning.
It is. But what about the United Nations? Have they responded at all?
Well, Danny Danon, he has just taken up the position of the new Israeli ambassador to the UN, his second stint. He gave a stinging speech to the Security Council. He said this: "Following my urgent request, the UN Security Council will finally convene on Wednesday, so that'll be overnight today, for the first time since October 7 massacre to hold an official discussion on the hostages. It is a disgrace that it has taken the Council 11 months and the brutal execution of 6 hostages by Hamas terrorists to finally convene this discussion. I extend my gratitude to the representatives of the United States, the United Kingdom and France for calling for this meeting. The Security Council must unequivocally condemn these Nazi-like terrorist organisations and demand the immediate and unconditional release of all the hostages." Now, considering the UN's track record of anti-Israel and anti-Semitic posturing and its condemnation of Israel for crimes she hasn't committed, and the number of nations, war criminals and terrorists that the United Nations hosts, tolerates and funds, I actually have a very low expectation that the Security Council will actually respond righteously on this issue.
Well, let's wait and see. But didn't Francesca Albanese mention the hostages as well?
You know, she did. And just to be clear, she's no relation to our Prime Minister. But Francesca Albanese did make a statement. She said, you know, all the hostages, the Israeli hostages, must all be released, as well as the Palestinian hostages. Now, I have to say, there are no Palestinian hostages. She's talking about the terrorists and the war criminals who committed atrocities that are in Israeli prisons. She wants them released. She's equating the terrorists in Israeli prisons with the hostages in terrorist tunnels underground in Gaza, held by terrorists.
Which again is it's a subconscious narrative that these are guerrillas in a resistance movement fighting the oppressor, and that they've been captured in a noble cause. That's really the unspoken
But if they're hostages,
narrative.
they're innocent. They're innocent victims. This is not true.
No, I'm talking about the terrorists who are in the Israeli prisons.
Oh, yeah.
The subconscious narrative about them is that they are freedom fighters and that they're involved in a just struggle against an oppressor. So they're being treated like the hostages, but obviously they're not hostages.
No, not at all. They're criminals. They're terrorists. But the other thing is that the UK government condemned Hamas and then said immediately they were cutting arms shipments to Israel. Make that make sense. I don't get it. But having said that, and I think we might have mentioned this previously, Israel is working on producing its own military needs since their quote-unquote friends keep betraying them. So,
And no surprise about the UK government. I mean, this is the same party in power now that gave us Jeremy Corbyn as their leader, who was obviously very outspoken in his criticisms of Israel. And I suspect there's a lot of elements in that.
Jeremy Corbyn has actually just started a new political party over there, and it's aligned with a whole lot of Islamic politicians who've just come to power, and their focus is anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian. So that's a brand new party just come to life in the UK.
And no surprises there. But
not at all.
But I also hear that the IDF is having to deal with terror groups and attacks in Judea and Samaria as well.
As if Israel didn't have enough war fronts to deal with and the pressure from the rest of the world. Yep, leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran have been calling for Arabs inside Israel to increase attacks against Jews. There's been a rise in car bombings, ramming attacks, stabbing shootings, which shows all the signs of the rise of a third intifada, like the return to the start of this century. There were daily suicide bombings and such. And hence, the IDF is having to go into numerous Arab towns where Hamas has embedded itself. They're rooting out the terrorists. They're destroying weapons manufacturing labs, confiscating huge stores of weapons that have been smuggled in from Iran. Because there's a great concern at the moment that there could be an attempt by Hamas and Islamic Jihad in these communities to attempt another October 7 style attack, and Israel is absolutely not going to tolerate that.
And for good reason. But finally, Mandy, what's happening with the hard left agitators inside Israel causing unrest and division?
This is probably the most concerning thing of all, because when Israel is united, they are incredibly strong. But when Israel is divided, they become very vulnerable. Their focus comes off the need to defend themselves and onto their fighting of each other, which is what happened with October 7. Benny Gantz, he is a left-wing politician. He resigned from the current coalition government, and he's been agitating to destroy Bibi Netanyahu. So has two former prime ministers who no longer hold any political office at all. But they've been stirring up the left-wing activists that are mostly in Tel Aviv and calling for them to protest. These protests have been growing, some of them into 100,000 people, really disruptive. There was a call for a general strike. That got cancelled very quickly because the court said it was highly illegal because it was politically motivated. And the general strike was supposed, like the unions calling for a general strike. The Arab media is watching the unrest and they're laughing. And the left don't realise just how vulnerable they're making their nation and their security and national security. Some senior leaders, such as Gantz, has been leaking statements to the media that are causing security breaches. It's highly dangerous for Israel as a whole. I mean, it is subversive. I would maybe suggest it's even seditious because they're trying to bring down a democratically elected government because of their hatred of Bibi. I mean, you've heard of Trump derangement syndrome, right? I don't care what political side of the aisle you're on, but it's a real thing, right? We've all heard of it. Well, this is Bibi derangement syndrome. It's really dangerous because it's demonstrating that their hatred of one man is far greater to them and more important to them than their love and security for their nation and their people. In a time of war, it's unbelievable. And many believe that this is a behaviour that's emboldening Hamas to not only execute hostages and threaten to murder even more, of which there are about 103, 104 still left, but it could escalate into something even worse. So I guess I would finish with this. Please, and I do every time that we talk, please pray for the people of Israel. Most importantly, that they would look to their God for their security, stability and their help, rather than the nations of the world and even their own strength and capabilities, that they would look to God. Because God is drawing his people. Many of them are now going, this is the worst we've ever experienced, and they are turning to the Lord. But we need Israel as a whole to turn, look to their God and put their faith and trust in him.
Amen. Well, Mandy Worby, as always, very informative, very insightful, and looking forward to another update next week here on 2020.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.